Welcome to Puzzle Dungeon Workshop. Today's guest is a man who looked at dice and said no. He's the author of His Majesty the Worm, the tarot-driven TTRPG where delving into the dungeon feels suspiciously like consulting your horoscope, except the stars are definitely trying to kill you. You may also know him from Rise Up Comus, one of the most prominent OSE blogs in Community Number 2, where he spits wisdom like D10 special doors. Please welcome His Majesty, the Josh McCrowell. How you doing, Josh?
Hey, hi. Thanks for having me.
Before we go any further, can I get you to assure the dozen of listeners right now that I asked for your permission to introduce you as His Majesty?
You did. But it was appropriate to do so.
Thank you, Your Majesty. Before we move actually even further out, can we talk about D10 special doors for a minute?
Oh, yeah, sure.
You posted it on November 11th, 8 days before my birthday. Thank you.
Special present. Just
You start off here saying that you're writing because you don't have any good ideas and you were trying out a prompt to limber up.
Right.
Is this your usual method to get out of a creative block?
Yeah, I don't know if it's my usual one. Every time I do it, I remember that it works. I think that writing to prompts is an effective way to get some of your better ideas rattled out of your brain meat. I think writing to prompts, it just gives you better ideas than the stuff that's sitting on top. You're staring at them and it could take longer. It could take a long time. You're kind of banging your head into this, right? You're like, I have to write towards, tarot cards is a great example of sort of like generative idea creators. When I was writing a book that I just went on to pre-order last week. It's called The Castle Automatic, and I wrote that by laying out tarot cards and writing rooms based on the pathing that I saw. And like sometimes you're just like, well, what am I going to do with this? Like I don't have any ideas. And you're sitting there and you're staring at it. And eventually when the idea comes, that's the good one. The one that like kind of took the longest to press and until it, like all the coal became diamonds or whatever. That's the good idea. So writing towards prompts is a really, really good way to like shake your brain out, have good ideas. And yeah, I just wrote that blog post one day because I couldn't think of a single good secret door. I couldn't think of one. And I was like, well, okay, now I don't have to write one, I have to write 10. So I'm just gonna like throw these things at the paper and see like kind of what sticks. So I just opened up, Blogspot and started churning those out.
Right on. And Castle Automatic, that originated as a Dungeon 23 project, right? And that's how you.
And that's another.
Is that how you tackle every day? Was whipping out the tarot?
Right.
That's pretty cool.
You have a tarot card, you flip one over, and that's your prompt for the day. And I think a daily writing prompt is another really good example of writing towards prompts. You're just like, okay, every day I have to write something. I have to, even if I don't want to, even if I don't have any ideas, I don't get to like get up for my coffee until I've done my daily writing exercise. And that I've got a lot out of it actually. Like I know people that had, anything that you have to do every day. You feel so much like weird anxiety about like not doing it those 100 days that you don't out of 365. But I do think that like daily activities are effective forms of kind of like creativity for me.
Yeah. And the practice probably really helps also.
Probably can't hurt.
So in these special doors, I really, a bunch of them stand out to me, but I really love the snail door. The door that's actually a slow-moving flail snail blocking the path with their big magic psychedelic shield.
Cheers, I'm glad you like that one.
I like the implication that the flail snail is not actively trying to block your path, but it's just so apathetic. Right. It's just sweet, taking its sweet time. And you
Yeah,
can wait
yeah,
it out
exactly.
too, right? But it might take like weeks or months to get by.
I mean, Snorlax. I had the great idea of a Snorlax. It's no, there's no new ideas anywhere.
It's the perfect quest creature too, though, right? Like the Snorlax, you gotta get the flute with the flail
Mhm.
snail. You might be harvesting its magic shell shield, right? And I think its
Mhm.
slime does something else too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and every monster in the dungeon has, is its own reward. Dungeon Meshi taught us that.
Indeed. I immediately thought Mega Dungeon with all these entries included together. I think there's a bunch of hooks that players can grab onto from these. They're just wonderful. Great mini quest for delving, as you said. And you got me excited about a Metroidvania style dungeon, actually, which I hear you may know a thing or two about.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love so the space that I love, the things that I love to do in RPGs. I love dungeons, and that's why I wrote His Majesty the Worm. And it's all about dungeons. It's focused on dungeons, and I run big dungeons. I run dungeons as campaigns. Mega dungeons are it's a slippery definition, but dungeons as campaigns is a pretty good one. And Metroidvanias are, I don't play a lot of video games anymore. The older I get, the fewer I play. But when a new good Metroidvania comes out, I usually try it out. And those are the ones that I like stick with and actually can beat. Um, and so yeah, I think like writing Metroidvania like um, patterns into my dungeons is something that's really appealing to me.
Yeah, and the Castle Automatic is one of these types of dungeons, right? Coming out for His
Right. Yeah,
Majesty the Worm. Can you give us the
that's
pitch
right.
for it?
Yes. Okay. So Castle Automatic is a dungeon for His Majesty the Worm. It has 5 levels, over 100 rooms. It is built to model these like Metroidvania-like patterns. So, a sprawling open map with lots of locks and keys that players will solve by you know uh, exploration and clever thinking and uh, changing the environment to overcome the different obstacles. The the Castle Automatic um, was built by a tyrant giant, or at the behest of a tyrant giant, who then locked the labyrinth maker, in the dungeon, and eventually the dungeon was overrun with vampires from space and was lost to time. And the engines that kind of like control the internal times, the time of year, time of day, in the dungeon have been broken. And the players come in and need to turn those back on in order to overcome obstacles. Different times of day and year and the different weather are needed to like explore the dungeon.
Yeah. I really like the idea of the players learning more information about the mechanics of the dungeon, using that to their advantage. And once they learn that, they can kind of systematically go through the areas that they saw before and try and unlock them, right? With their
Yeah,
new
exactly.
multi purpose OSR style tools that they found.
Yeah. Yes,
Dig it.
and that like your the fact that the dungeon space doesn't grow old. It's not about completion. You're not trying to 100% it, and it's not okay. It's just going forward, kind of like in a straight line. It's this world is the space where the game takes place, and doesn't grow old and gets in fact like you know the more you explore, the more those past spaces kind of change and you get new use out of them as you retread your path.
Dig it. I hear you got handouts, man.
Well, okay. Has this happened to you? You have a book, and there's sweet art in it. Art that like is expensive and looks good, and you turn it around to show your players the thing looks like the monster looks like this, and you have to like hold like sheets over half of the page so they
Yep.
don't see the text on it. Like just put that in a just and I forget the first time and this is a shame because the first time I saw somebody just kind of like repackage the art. It's like, hey, okay, this art you can just here's the art assets as well. I thought it was such a good idea because
Yeah.
it solved that issue for me, and I thought I'm gonna do that too, so I'm gonna do that too.
Illustrations are great. The handouts are great. It helps do so much lifting for a GM, especially when dealing with puzzles.
Hmm. Right. Yes. And so all the puzzles have like their own illustrations, or when there's like a visual element that is
Yeah,
needed,
I love it.
runes, 12 doors with different symbols, all of those need to have those need like I'm illustrating those really specifically so that they can be held out to players.
Oh, that's great. I'm not sure if I caught that. Are you doing all the illustrations as well?
Oh, am I doing the illustrations? No, no, no. I'm
Oh,
asking for the illustrations.
okay, okay.
I have commissioned these illustrations. No, I
Gotcha.
can't draw. No. I wish I could.
Say what you want about like Tomb of Horrors, but those illustrations are super like evocative and imaginative,
Agree.
and handing those out is just beautiful.
I agree. Yeah, yeah, the tournament dungeon like that, like those middle sections where they have those like full page illustrations, I think are great. I totally agree with you about Tomb of Horror, yeah.
So you're partnered up with Exalted Funeral to do the pre-orders instead of crowdfunding on this, right? And His
Yeah, that's
Majesty,
right.
yeah, His Majesty
Right.
the Worm wasn't crowdfunded traditionally either, right?
Right. Yeah, I have a sort of a healthy suspicion of the current state of Kickstarter, these big Kickstarters, you know. Um I think Kickstarter, especially as much as the Worm was, you know, my first big publication. I had some small things before. Um and really I think that I was a really good candidate for crowdfunding. I wasn't attached to a publisher. I had a large manuscript. I needed help finishing it. You know, I needed editors and graphic designers and artists. But that's not really how Kickstarter's set up. People like that aren't set up for success at Kickstarter. The Kickstarter model asks for a level of sophistication for the project to do well. Essentially, a completed book with all those things already attached to it, right? A publisher, editors, um, uh, you know, and especially art. So, I looked at Kickstarter and thought like, well, I know that I'm not, despite it kind of sounding like I would be a good candidate, I wasn't. So, I avoided Kickstarter for His Majesty the Worm. I used itch funding, and it was long. It was a it gets there when it gets there model. I put up just single chapters with bad layout and no art. For pay what you will, you know, like please, if you know if this is kind of like fun, you know, if this is a 30, 40 pages of a chapter, this is if you got a kick out of it, give me coffee money, right? Like give me $22. And eventually I used that to like scrape together all those things that you need. And I'm not willing to like now that I do have like maybe the weight of a publisher, I still have a healthy suspicion of crowdfunding, and so we're just going kind of like directly into I have confidence the book is being made. It's not like will they won't they like kayfabe that comes out of Kickstarter projects like ooh will it fund, it's like no we're gonna make the book, but we're doing a pre-order campaign to help gauge interest, and because you know the hiring artists does take a lot of money, so right now there's a pre-order campaign going on at Exalted Funeral, and I would love if you're listening to my sonorous baritone voice, I would love for you to back the pre-order campaign. It kind of like help me prove the proof of concept that regular people can make RPG books without needing to, I don't know, give Kickstarter half the funds when it funds. So I think that would be great to see that this could actually work out.
Is this a route that you would recommend to others in a similar situation?
I would recommend itch funding at a drop of the hat. You know, it again, it takes a long time. You know, that book was in development for 7, 8 years. But you know, this isn't my job. I have a regular, normal person job. This is my hobby, and I care about it very, very deeply. But the level of like time and stress that like goes into a Kickstarter, I don't recommend to anybody. Um, and you have to hustle a little bit to like kind of like get yourself out there and be parts of gaming communities, but that is fun to do. And Itch Funding was a model that I think has a lot of promise. The kind of like longer tail projects are good for
Yeah.
people in my situation.
So I imagine you're stressing about things that you want to be stressing about instead of pleasing
Right.
your backers, like where's the next
Right.
update or where's not.
That's another thing that I've observed in Kickstarter is that it makes people that I like, kind of like the RPG community of people that I want to talk to, into like this weird codependent relationship where they expect something, I don't know, like a little like weird out of people. They're like, I'm your backer and you need to give this to me now and nobody else can see it before I do because I'm the backer. They become brats and I don't want like my audience to turn into brats. I'd rather have them to be my friends. So I think that like that weird relationship, some sort of codependency happens in crowdfunding, and I would rather be worried about real things than that.
Right on. What's it like working with Exalted Funeral on this? I imagine they've been pretty busy lately. They're doing a lot of stuff, and tariff nonsense is still a looming threat, right? Did that affect the
Tariff
schedule for?
nonsense,
Yeah.
tariff nonsense is I mean, is one of the hardest things. What a tragedy for people who are just doing something as hobby projects, which is almost all 99.9% of the RPG industry. These are hobbyists projects of people that aren't making much more money than it takes to like kind of do their next thing. Um, and the added financial strain of the continuation of the tariffs. I mean, you like so much of Europe just is not shipping to America right now. America, where I live, we've embargoed ourselves. Like, and when you're making just like, and this is true for like all sorts of people. If you're um, in academia, if you're in poetry, if you're just like writing, fiction, like the ability to get a book printed at a cost that is anything close to what Americans expect to pay for it and then ship to you is going away. And we did that to ourselves. And I can't imagine something that was like worse or like people just artists like that, just
Yeah.
artists that are doing this for the love of the game.
Yeah. Did that affect the schedule for Castle Automatic at all, or EF's got it down now?
I don't know schedule wise.
Yeah.
It certainly affects considerations of supply chain and cost.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it might affect the schedule, but I think the real schedule, like the people that felt the schedule pinch were your Dolmen Woods, where it came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Had
It
been in
was
production
it
for a
was
long
worth
time, and then
right,
whoops,
right.
shoot.
Everything was all set up. It was ready to come over, and like they're seized. They're physically seized by imports and customs, which is just really bad for small time publishers in this space.
So I think we have time for this. The Designing Dungeons course, or How to Kill a Party in 30 Rooms or Less. Your co author on this, Markdown Heavy Creator Resource with Warren D. from iCast Light. What is this thing, and how come you and Warren felt like it should exist?
Yeah, great question. So, so my day job is I'm a technical writer, and so I create instructional design, and have done for 20 years. The Designing Dungeons course is, like I said, I love dungeons, and I having put out His Majesty the Worm, I heard not infrequently people say things like, "I don't know that I can make a whole dungeon by myself. That's a big ask." I'm like, it's not a big ask. It's pretty easy. It's just a series of kind of discrete steps, and it's fun to do. And here's how you do it. So using my background, I and honestly, War and I collaborated on it because he was the first person to have the idea. He was like, I wish there was just like a step-by-step guide that taught people exactly how to do create a dungeon, and at the end of it, they'd have a
Yeah.
dungeon. I'm like, well, hell, I can do that. I know exactly how to do that. I'll just let me just write that. And so I was like, Warren, would you like to participate on this? Because it was your idea, and I just kind of like took it and ran. And he was like, yes. So we both have like not super dissimilar, but we're from different sides of the old school. And we both have our kind of authoritative voice in it. Sometimes I'm speaking,
Literally.
sometimes he is. And so we both have advice for different sorts of things. Like I call out things that are worm specific. He calls out things that are like BX specific. But it's a 12-step course. It has a workbook, and if you got like a daily prompt, if you just like did a course, a week, you would have in a couple weeks of work, you would have a dungeon ready to go for your players, and you would see how easy it is and how fun it is, and kind of like how achievable just like making your own dungeon is, and what's appealing about this kind of play.
Right on. Thank you thank you and Warren for putting this out there. I think this is a fantastic resource for folks just getting started, or folks that want to refresh and read up on it. I've made a few dungeons myself, and a lot of times I forget some stuff. I go back to the blog posts, I go back to the checklists, and I'm like, do they have something to talk to? Do they have something that's going to kill them? Maybe.
Yeah, cheers. I hope it's helpful. And of course, nothing needs to have everything. Like, the variety is the spice of life.
There you go.
It's yeah.
Very true. All right. So let's talk about Puzzle Dungeon Jam. Folks are making puzzle dungeons that feel like they're straight out of the Zelda Golden Age, right? My favorite is Ocarina of Time. But instead of a video game, we get to experience this through the magic of tabletop RPGs. So you can get help doing it. We're on the Zemo Discord. We're chatting about things. I'm giving feedback on early submissions. They're not reviews. They're developmental editing suggestions. This is the kind of advice that you get from a fellow creator. And this is one of those feedbacks. Josh has graciously agreed to assist me today. He's not here all the time yet. Thank you, Josh. There's less than 2 weeks left, and the jam runs until the morning of December 15th. Come make something cool. And I'll let you in on a little secret. Don't tell anyone, but if you still want me to take a look at your work after the jam ends, puzzly or not, I'll still do it. Josh, today we're looking at Eels at the End of the World. This is by Bad Free, and there's a very particular style to this adventure. Before I reveal a cover to this PDF, the very particular style is that it is absolutely insane. And this was a challenge to make constructive notes on. But I did my best, and I think that there are some fresh, bonkers ideas in this that would shine if they had some room to breathe outside of the information design. You think that's fair to say, Josh?
I think that's very fair to say. I think that's well summed up.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, should we give like a kind of like a basic overview of like the plot of the dungeon and like what some of the like links are?
Absolutely. I was just gonna say I'm gonna go over my overall notes, which kind of include a little bit of the background, and then you can tell us what yours are, and then we can move into deep dive of the text. Does that sound good?
Cool. Sounds good.
All right, cool. So this is the cover. I have it up here, and it's Eels at the End of the World. The cover says Eels ? At the end of the world. So the background of this place, I think, is we have a mad wizard, and they have a theory of invisible water. A lot of ideas thought insane by their wizard colleagues. They're dealing a lot in altering reality, and there's a lot to do with electricity here. Is that your understanding of the background, pretty much?
Yeah. So I the tell me if I'm wrong. So I think that he like went to like the end of time, and he like made this big dungeon to like I don't know to like prove his theory. And the wizard is now dead, but his machines are kind of like living on and will destroy the world if it's not disassembled. And there's I mean I think the like main way that like characters interact with the dungeon is by taking eels that they find in the dungeon, and eels are start out life as a kind of neutral charge, but you can charge them with positive or negative energy, which changes their color to red or black. And then each eel can be put into a lantern. Eels of different colors have different lantern effects when they shine the light of the lantern on things, and you can like harness electricity in the dungeon to activate machines and move things around. Is that I think also kind of like important to call out is like that's the premise of
Yeah,
the gimmick. Yeah.
yeah. The theme I see in here is energy, electricity, as you said. Um, and my main thing with this that I see is that there's too many elements and gimmicks. I think
Mm.
the theme is energy. Stick to that. There's a hot cold timer. There's 4 or 5 different alchemical components. I'll call them, as well as mathematical formulas for combining elements in this dungeon. It's a lot to keep track of, in addition to the mechanics of the eels themselves generating electricity to power things in the dungeon. I think if you want to have a timer mechanic here, have one related to the energy gimmick. Whether it powers stations that are malfunctioning or in need of charging, or that are supercharged and generating side effects like electric banshees and stuff. There's a lot of juice here, pun intended. I like that there's OSR style tools that you can use here to power up when you harness electricity. And for a puzzle dungeon, I want to see more repetition and loops to teach the players about these mechanics. There's a heat ray, for instance, which is very cool. I want to see stuff like players find many clear ice cubes or ice blocks along their delve with important things inside, things they want, shiny things. Players find the heat ray, doesn't have any power, but they know what it is because, let's be real, we know what a hairdryer is. And now they want to discover a way to turn this thing on. They want those things. They know they need to melt them. Lucky for them, this is a dungeon with an energy theme, and it should be pulsing hard. I'm talking 80s style static hair and plasma balls. They power the heat ray, melt the ice, and profit. Those were my main takeaways for this. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I think my main takeaway is that I think that the tool gimmick, like you said, of the charged eels, the lanterns, I think that's really compelling. I think there's something weird about like having like a neutral state eel. I mean, just the eels that alone is kind of like a cool theme, but like the idea that you can have like lanterns with different effects, I think that's really cool. I actually I didn't mind the heat as an element as well. I mean, I think that you could keep that, especially because something that I liked in the dungeon was that as the heat rises, parts of the dungeon are melting. So things that are in blocks, kind of like organically melt out. So as you come back to them, if you retrace your steps, things that like monsters, demons that used to be in big blocks of ice are now escaped and roaming around. I think that the way the dungeon changed as you explored it was actually so closely tied to its premise. I didn't want to lose that.
Mm-hmm.
I did think mechanics as suggested for when that happens were way too complex.
That's what did it for me,
Um,
I think.
yeah, I would suggest just doing them. If you have the heat index, so on page what 3, okay, so
Yep.
like heat to check rolling counter die on 1 increase heat level, check when entering dungeon after heavy machine use 10p, and I'll get to this sort of thing later. And when ice is destroyed, negates cold die, dries and soothes, makes rest pleasant. So there's a cold die that increases wet. The cold die steps up and down. I think you can drop that. There's like 6 levels of heat, and I would just do that. As the players make mistakes or turn things on. So if you turn on the heat ray, I would just increase like every time heat ray used, heat index raises by 1.
Yeah.
Every when you turn on big machines, when you do stuff like that, I would just not random. It's just like, there's 8 triggers in the dungeon that will raise it, and you don't want to do all of them because then the dungeon explodes. So you are trying to avoid doing it, but I wouldn't bother rolling. I would just kind of have it tied to events.
Tied to events would make it easier to remember to do as the person running the game too.
For sure. I think if in terms of critique, having read this closely and spent some time with it, I don't think I can run this dungeon without more affordances. I need a simpler layout. I need more explanations. I need full sentences. No acronyms, clearer maps, simpler gimmicks. Um, so I think there's like really good ideas here, but I tell you, I can't. I couldn't run the dungeon. I can't. As I was going through, I was making notes on rooms, and eventually I stopped because so much of my notes were like, I don't understand how this works. I don't get this room. I don't understand this. And a lot of that was for me information presentation and information design.
Yeah.
Um, so I think a lot of my critique are around those because it was hard for me to. I mean, not just hard for me. Like my preferences are different. It's like I literally just it was just like a brick wall. I tried very hard to read the sentences and found them uh you know uh, illegible, right?
I had the same experience when I was looking through it. Speaking of the information design, it specifically it's hard to figure out what's important through the formatting. There's a lot of abbreviations for things that I think hurt more than help. I think
Oh,
they can be
absolutely.
dropped. Um, there's also a lot of stuff in these entries, and it's not really clear what information is freely available to the players that I could tell them, and what information is hidden or discoverable. Um, and yeah, I would probably have to make extensive notes and unpack this in something separate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say it felt like a lot of the entries read more like notes for the
Mhm.
designer themselves instead of something for another person to understand and convey to their players. There were
Mhm.
several things I wasn't sure how to role play, and I wasn't sure how to describe them to my players either. Uh, there's talks of like rants about a specific topic, and or complaining about things. I'm like, well, what are they complaining about? What are they doing this? I'd rather have that fleshed out a little more.
Yeah. Your point about notes like resonates with me. I think I- if I had one thing that I was gonna like hammer home and as a strong preference, it's the acronyms. Here's a sentence from the adventure. Protomatter parentheses PM colon 4C/T made from 2ES and 2BM and 4E or one ghost in room 2.8 pliable gray bioclay with programmable fate parentheses 2.6. I mean that's a sentence that I literally have no idea what that says. A lot of these things like ES, BM, E, C, T are defined. Sometimes they're defined on the first page, and sometimes those definitions are not defined till like much later, and the acronym is being used. And it's not just like the ordering thing. I would just get rid of them. If you could say this to me in an English sentence, that would be fantastic.
Agreed.
I would use zero acronyms. And there's a lot of other like information design things about. Okay, so like the is it on page 2? I think what this means is that there's a highlighting shorthand for whether a room is dark or lit. And the way that this is told to you is ::1.1 : rain cave, and that's in yellow highlighting. And then it says the word light, and then there's a yellow highlighter block, and then there's a black block, and then it says dark, and then it says 1.1 : rain cave : and that's in a black highlighter. I guess that means that some rooms are dark and some rooms are light. You could just say that, like, all the rooms in this complex are lit unless said otherwise, and you could say this room is dark, and baby, I guarantee you that is easier to like parse at the table. It's stuff like that. It's like it's the kind of the shorthands and the visual. I like the colors, really. All of the text is highlightable, even when in kind of like a funky font. But it's just like, if this was said out loud in English, it would be a lot easier to understand.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, what do you think about going through on the pages? Do you want to see how far we get?
Sure.
Okay.
Although I like I said, I at some point I stopped
Yeah.
really critiquing like the kind of the room by room, because my notes seemed to be somewhat repetitious. I struggled to get to like understand what was going on a room by room basis.
Don't sweat it. I felt the same way. There were a few comments that I had on here that I thought we could share through, and then we could give our final notes and move on from there. Cool.
Yeah, I definitely have some more, I think stuff that I like, and stuff that I have suggestions about for sure.
All right, cool. Yeah. So we talked about a lot of the things over here, too many gimmicks and stuff. So I think I'm going to skip to the rain cave, the demon prison, the ice crab lure. So there's already a lot going on in many of these entries. And like I said, it's hard to tell what's important. It would be hard for me to describe all of these things to my players and know what was important and describe it to them just by reading it this way. There's a lot of new concepts. There's machinery that's made of muscle. And I really need to digest and chew on that and unpack it a little bit and say, what does this really look like? That's the information that I want to see and I want immediately available to me so I can convey it to my players. Mm-hmm. There's also, I think, a possibility of random occupants in some of these rooms, like an ice crab lure. There's 3 and 6 Yeti, 4 and 6 crab, 2 and 6 goblin. Again, wasn't sure exactly what the notation meant. I think it's a chance that they're in there. But what are they doing in there? I'm not sure why any one of these would be in there at that time.
I had notes about this too. I have a strong sense that if I've understood some of the intent correctly, you're going to be rolling a lot as a GM as your players move through the rooms. You have to roll a random encounter once every 2 rooms. Once every 6 rooms, you're checking for cold die. Every room has like these like 3 and 6 chance Yeti, 4 and 6 chance goblins, and so I'm rolling 3d6 just for the crowds, and there's a random encounter, and there's a cold. Like, that's just too much rolling. You can put those things into a random encounter table, and like Direct Sun said, if they had some kind of like scripts, like kind of like easy encounter activities they were doing. The Yeti and the goblins are fighting. The crabs are looking for, are chewing on the cables and will like destroy the electricity in this room. That stuff like makes the encounter kind of like ready to go right out of the gate.
There are a few of them. I think the cardinal directions might be incorrect. in the entry itself. But I also think that you don't really need them. You have the map.
Mhm.
And if you really wanted to put descriptions on what there was in the map, you could do that. Or as a GM, I say, oh, what's the next room? What's down that hallway? Let me just check. And I say, oh, yeah, this room smells because there's a rotting corpse in there. The stink of death is to the south.
Yeah, I had the exact same point. I like that there's a player map too. You know, it there you find it. I think I'm a big believer in giving the players maps. I loved that. You know, this was called out specifically, that the players had a version of the map, and because of that, you know, there's so much. You know, if you know, there's so much attempt at brevity and acronyms and highlighting to convey information in a way that was a barrier to my understanding. The thing that I didn't need help with was like the exits from the room. I agree. It was kind of strange that so much effort was taken for brevity, and you're still getting the exits from the room notes. So that's definitely a space to where you can get some space back, right?
Yep. In the Boulder Hall, it says, I think halfway into the description, it says the boulder completely blocks the door. But there's a note near the top here that says heavy armor cannot pass, which made me think that maybe this was just an obstacle for player characters with heavy armor, and like other people could slip through. And if that's the case, just say that, and you can put that right in the description there. I love the heat ray. I talked about how I feel like that should be used with loops to kind of reinforce the energy mechanic. Some notes about the notation here. I wasn't sure how ghosts worked. It was a mechanic that I feel like wasn't described extremely well. There's a point where they're described as having an AoE, but they don't have any stats. They don't have any damage notations. I think they might be like water, where you turn on a tap and there's just like a flow of ghosts that come out of wherever it's coming and they generate electricity. Can you capture them like Pokemon? I'm not sure how it works. Clarifying that would help.
I agree. I was also very confused by the ghost, but yeah, I think that all of the so in the text there's sort of a appendix after the room descriptions where there are you know, the residents are given, and I have some feedback about the way these are written also, but like having them at the end, you know, you can't make, okay, so this might be a preference thing. You can never make everybody happy. Lord knows. Sometimes these things are at the beginning and people are like, get that out of there. I want to see what the dungeon. Sometimes they're at the end and people are like, I don't know who the Proton Man is. I can't possibly understand who the Proton Man is, and I can't scroll to the bottom. And so like the ghosts are kind of described there. But like, so I did wish that the summation of like what had happened in the dungeon to like set this up was more clearly explained at the beginning of the text, because it is really important for understanding some of this stuff. I think, for example, the behaviors of ghosts, why they're dripping, who the Proto Man is. You know, I'm only guessing really at some of this stuff, but I think, did you have this understanding too that the Proto Man is like created by the wizard who made this place, Omo?
Yeah.
And then he killed his father and he like sacrificed him to the Eel King, who's a character that's mentioned like several times, but doesn't have an entry. The Eel Queen has an entry, but she's warring with the Eel King, and the Eel King isn't mentioned 5 or 6 times, but yeah, so like, yeah, it wasn't super clear, but like that, if that story is important, which I feel like it is, it needs to be sooner. Like it's not just like it doesn't feel like a preference thing. It's like, who's the Eel King? What's going on?
These are things that I completely missed, Josh.
Sure.
this sounds very cool, and I would love to see it distilled in a format
Right.
that I could
Right.
play with.
Yes. Same. A lot of this. Did you notice actually amongst the NPCs? Did you notice that the author
I did.
Badfree has a self insert?
I did see they're a level 14 magic user.
Yes. I thought that was kind of cute.
That is cute. I was a little bit confused on how that was used too, though. There's is this like possessive? It's like in entry 2.7, Omi's room. I guess that's possessive, right? Because it says Omi's, two spellbooks Omi's. There's just no comma there, or
Right.
no apostrophe. And then that will be the same for bad freeze. I'm like, is there more than one? No, it's just possessive. Okay,
Yes.
that makes sense.
Yeah. There's no capitalization or atypical punctuation, stuff like that. Yeah. And that's that could be a choice. I'm not really harping on that as much as some of the other kind of more fundamental.
Yeah. I Speaking of the entries at the back, though, I wasn't sure what 1d6 times itself was. I'm guessing that's one of the heat die, maybe.
Where do you see that?
It's right next to the eel horror, the 40-foot long
Oh,
rubber eel pit bull. This seems like a wandering encounter table, right?
yeah.
It's not
Yes.
specifically called out as that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, yes. That's sort of my point. It was like frequently I'm like, huh. I wonder what the intention is there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
But if we're talking about the back, I had a note about like the way. So I frequently felt that there's an artfulness in the writing that I could tell the author had this authorial voice that I liked. And sometimes, despite the compelling language, there is still a lack of clarity that got in the way of me understanding what was really going on. So like the Proto Man is a good example. So the first NPC that's like listed, it goes the Proto Man 2.7, which is to say that he I think frequently is in 2.7. Flesh Go Tomo. The Proto Man runs wire, not paste. Is nothing like his father. He is a spitting image made of liquid cement metal. He is the man who chooses his form. The reef is the most beautiful thing in the world, he says. We must keep it safe and preserved in time. I think that language is very beautiful, and it avoids telling me some things that I wanted to know. In the third paragraph, he cast the spell she gave him. The ice slithered in. He would do it again. He wants the Eel Queen dead. He gave his father to the Eel King as payment for all eels. A dead wizard is a powerful thing, so the body sprouted with life. Proto Man lectures the Yeti. I just that those relationships are poetically described, and I don't know how to. I don't have enough information for me to run the dungeon as well, and so like I can tell there's like really strong authorial voice, and if it was put to good and not evil, I'd love to read it.
I'm gonna go to my final thoughts on this.
Okay.
Because I feel like this is a good segue. There's an audience for this. Like you said, it's very poetic, a lot of the language. The background information about this place somewhere, I think, talks about altering reality itself. And I'm pretty sure I saw that. I definitely felt like I doubted my own sanity more than once while I was reading this. And I think you can keep that feeling while also doing good information design. It doesn't need to be something that can be run on the fly, but it can be something that requires less head scratching for the GM, is what I think. How do you feel?
I feel the same. And my practical advice, and I mean this in a constructive way. My practical advice is now. I mean, I think that this is a document that the author could use to run the game for their audience. And if your players are having fun, great. Mission accomplished. You've made a cool dungeon. Your players are having fun. That's the goal. If your goal is to try and get it out there so other people can kind of like run it the way you do, I think that now that you have it out of your head, the first step is to start with a blank piece of paper. Open up a Google Doc. Just rewrite the dungeon from the ground up. Avoid acronyms like the plague. Start by giving a summary, the history of the dungeon, important event that happened, potential things that could happen, if the different mechanisms are going unchecked. Give a summation of all the important NPCs, and then just write each room in full sentences, and really build out the thoughts. And I think this dungeon would be really, really cool to experience in that way. I think that if you start over, now that you have it out of your head, that's like one big task, and making other people understand it is a different type of task. That's a whole different thing that you're going to need to struggle with. But that's what I would do if that is your end goal, is to help other people.
I agree. That's well said. Okay. Let's see what we got. Let's talk about the Puzzle Dungeon Jam again. This has been Puzzle Dungeon Workshop. Make something for the Puzzle Dungeon Jam. Run it for me if you're available, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. I'll play in it. If not, I'll still read it and give you feedback on it. It's available at www.puzzledungeon.com/jam. Gets you straight to the itch page. It's magic. Bam. Before we go, I want to talk to you real quick about my puzzle dungeon, A Familiar Tower. It is an escape room wizard tower that's going to put smiles on your players' faces. It's crowdfunding on BackerKit as part of Zine Month in February. I've not broken free of the shackles of crowdfunding yet. But Exalted Funeral, if you're listening, I'm keen. As our friends across the pond say, let's team up on something. For now, you can go to www.puzzledungeon.com/tower, and it gets you right to the BackerKit page. It's magic. So sign up now and get reminded at launch so that this number can go up and I can stress about other stuff. For the two of you who clicked the sign up button last week, thank you. And thank you, Josh, Your Majesty. It's been awesome chatting with you, and good luck with the Castle Automatic. Keep kicking butt.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
All right. Ciao, ciao.